Order. Questions to the Prime Minister. Mr. Khalid Mahmood.
Number one, please, sir.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, and in addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Khalid Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor was asked 6 times this morning whether it had conversations with Lord Green about tax avoidance. They don't like to hear it. Whether it had conversations with Lord Green about tax avoidance, he refused to answer. Will the PM now clarify whether he or the Chancellor has had conversations with Lord Green when he was the Trade Minister about tax avoidance at the HSBC?
We dealt with all this a fortnight ago. All the proper checks were made, and this is the same Lord Green, this is the same Stephen Green that Labour gave a job to just before the election. That's the truth, and they can't get away from it.
Mr. Andrew Turner.
Mr. Speaker, a centre for excellence is to be created on the Isle of Wight for composites, advanced manufacturing and marine technology. This project, led by GKN Aerospace and the Isle of Wight College, will benefit new and existing island businesses. Does the Prime Minister agree that this is an excellent example of government and supporting local economy and ensuring young people on the island have the skills that the industries of the future will need?
Well, I think my honourable friend is right. This is an excellent development. The Solent Local Enterprise Partnership has received nearly 11 million funding through the growth deal to build this centre of excellence for composites on the Isle of Wight. This is going to provide 550 students, workshop and learning facilities, and will include over 250 apprentices. This is all part of our long-term plan to build up Britain's skills, build up Britain's manufacturing, build up our apprenticeships, and make sure more people get the security and stability of work.
Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, before the last election, the Prime Minister made a no ifs, no buts promise on immigration. Can he remind the House exactly what that promise was?
Well, we promised to cut net migration. We've cut it from outside the European Union, but it's increased from inside the European Union, not least because we've created more jobs than the rest of the European Union put together.
He was rather coy about his precise promise, Mr. Speaker. It was in his contract with the British people. Net migration cut to the tens of thousands. But now it's at 298,000, higher than when he took office. And here's what he said in the contract. Here's what he said. If we don't deliver our side of the bargain, vote us out in 5 years' time. When he said that, did he mean it?
Well, there are 2 reasons for high migration. One is the growth of our economy, and the other is that our benefit system allows people to access that benefit system straight away. I say, let's keep the strong economy, let's change the benefit system. He wants to keep the benefit system and trash the economy.
Mr. Speaker, I do have to say to him, his promise on immigration makes the Deputy Prime Minister's promise on tuition fees look like the model of integrity. If he can break so spectacularly a solemn promise on a fundamentally important issue, why on earth should anyone believe any of his election promises this time?
Well, I'm glad he mentions the document. I brought it with me. I have, as you'd say, Mr. Speaker, procured a copy for the interests of the House, and I'd like to run through it. Here are the commitments we made. We will protect pensions. We protected pensions. We will train 4,000 Sure Start health visitors. We've trained 4,000 Sure Start health visitors. We will protect free TV licences for the over 75s and keep free eye tests for pensioners. We kept that promise. There's plenty. I've got all day, Mr. Speaker. I think these are very important. It says we'll keep the winter fuel allowance. We kept the winter fuel allowance. It says that we will ensure cancer patients get the treatments they need. We've made sure that happened. But, Mr. Speaker, there's lots more. There's lots more. Here we are. Just keep going. Plenty of time. health spending every year. We've increased health spending every year. We'll introduce a married couple's tax allowance. We've introduced a married couple's tax allowance. We'll increase the basic state pension. We've increased the basic state pension. There's plenty more, Mr. Speaker. These are commitments made, commitments kept. What a contrast.
Mr. Miliband.
So, Mr. Speaker, so now we know you can't believe the promise on immigration from the leader of the Conservative Party. It's not worth the paper. It's not worth the paper it's written on. Now,
Order. Can I just ask the House? Order. Can I just ask the House to have some regard for the views of the public about our behaviour, given that we'll be seeking their support in the weeks ahead? It's quite straightforward, really. Ed Miliband.
they're laughing about his broken promise on immigration. Now, let's ask him again. He promised net migration in the tens of thousands. Will he now admit that he has broken that promise, yes or no?
I've been very clear. We cut migration from outside the EU, but we've seen it rise inside the EU. We've got a plan to deal with that. But he talks about the commitments. Mr. Speaker, I've got a few more. It says we'll cut wasteful spending. We've cut wasteful spending. It says we'll reduce carbon emissions. We reduced carbon emissions. It says we'll have 400,000 apprentices. We've broken that promise. We've had 2 million apprentices. Election time, we're all getting to think about leaflets. I've got a little question. Apparently, you can go round to his office and he stands on a soapbox to make him look a little bit taller. Let's ask, how many people are going to put the leader of the opposition on their leaflets? Come on, hands up! Hands up! Come on, guys. Right. Here we are. I think that's enough about leaflets for now.
Mr. Speaker, so it's all about leadership. Well, there's a very excellent, great, and there's a very good chance to discuss these issues. The broadcasters have proposed a live head-to-head debate between the Prime Minister and me on the 30th of April, a week before polling day. I will be at that debate. Will he be at that debate?
It is all about leadership, Mr. Speaker, and we see no leadership from the party opposite. What's interesting, Mr. Speaker, we're having a debate now, and they cannot talk about the economy. They can't talk about jobs because there are more jobs being created. They can't talk about growth because growth is going up. They can't even talk about living standards because of the breakthrough report today showing living standards are back at their pre-crisis peak. I say, let's have these debates. Let's get on with them before the election.
Okay, if he wants an additional debate between me and him before the election, I'm very happy to agree to it. But the broadcasters have set a date. He says the election is all about me and him, but the one thing he wants to avoid is a TV debate between me and him. I'll give him another chance. I'll be there on April the 30th, a debate between me and him. Will he be there, yes or no?
He's now given up on the 7-corner debates. He doesn't want to debate with the Greens anymore. Yeah. He watched the press conference. We all thought it was a car crash. He probably thought it was a masterclass. We're having a debate now, and he can't talk about the economy. He can't talk about jobs. He can't talk about living standards. He can't talk about what we've done for our economy. And the reason why, he's got no leadership whatsoever. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, we have a recovering economy, and we mustn't let Labour wreck it.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next Monday, a seemingly minor amendment to the Road Traffic Act will it?
Order. The honourable gentleman is entitled to be heard. Mr. Burnley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next Monday, a seemingly minor amendment to the Road Traffic Act will allow 70,000 severely disabled wheelchair-using children to legally use a heavier class of wheelchair which better meets their complex needs. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating the excellent New Life Foundation for Disabled Children in my constituency, which has been campaigning for this change in the law for over 5 years and can now continue to make a real difference to the quality of life of some of the most severely disabled children in our country?
I'm very happy to, with my honourable friend, praise that business and also pay tribute to all those who give young people, disabled young people, the chance of more choice over wheelchairs. Anyone who's had a child in a wheelchair knows that you need the choice so that your child can actually have a better quality of life. And I'm delighted that this change in the law is going to help make that possible.
Mr. Barry Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My father died of cancer. My mother died of cancer. And my sister died of cancer. A year ago, the Prime Minister set a target that urgent cancer referrals should receive their first treatment within 2 months. In the last year, 20,000 people have not had that target met for them. Does the Prime Minister understand that even if the National Health Service can survive another 5 years of a Conservative government, 100,000 cancer patients cannot?
Well, look, first of all, the honourable gentleman, like probably everyone in this House and most people in our country, knows someone who's been affected by cancer or died of cancer. We all know that, and we know it is one of the biggest killers that we have to get to grips with in our country. What we've seen over the last 5 years, partly because we have protected health spending, is we've seen a 50% increase of referrals into cancer treatment. So something like 500,000 extra people have been treated. Because what we need when it comes to cancer is earlier diagnosis by the GP. That's why the information campaigns matter so much. And then when you go into treatment, yes, it does matter that the waiting targets are met. 2 out of the 3 key cancer targets are being met. We need to make sure all of them are met, and we also need to keep on with the Cancer Drugs Fund, which has given many people suffering cancer access to drugs and a longer life as a result.
Sir Edward Garnier.
Will my right honourable friend agree that too often some of NATO's leaders confuse announcements with action? Will he ensure that NATO does what it said it would at Cardiff last year, so that those who, for their own domestic reasons, want to undermine the political and territorial integrity of the alliance, realise that when we say we will defend it, we mean it, that we have the means to do so, and that we will do so?
So, well, my right honourable friend is absolutely right. That is why the Cardiff conference was so important. We said that we would stick to Article 5, and we will stick to Article 5. We said we'd draw up an action plan to help countries in Eastern Europe, including the Baltic states, and we are doing that. For Britain's part, we've got the Typhoons taking part in the Baltic Air Patrol. We've got 4,000 British troops taking part in operations in Eastern Europe. But it's very important that we are clear to those Baltic allies that when we sign up to Article 5, we mean it. And they want to hear our support, not only when they face a conventional threat, but also when they face threats of cyber attack as well. We need to show we're standing with them at this time.
Mr. David Winnick.
Without wishing to be personal, does he realise that many people consider that as Prime Minister, he simply doesn't understand the lives of millions of people in this country who try and live on modest incomes? The Tory party has been and remains the party of the rich and the privileged.
What I would say to the right honourable gentleman is you should judge a government by what happens to the people living in the country. And we see 1.85 million more people with a job. That is 1,000 extra people getting a job for every day this government has been in office. That's the security of a pay packet, the chance of providing for your family. He shakes his head, but that's the reality of Britain today. More apprentices, more jobs, more people able to provide for their families. I would have thought the Labour Party would welcome that.
Mr. Simon Wright.
Mr. Speaker, the Department for Education has overruled Norfolk County Council's proposal for an interim executive board to resolve the future of the Hewitt School in my constituency. Will the Prime Minister seek to establish why the DFE considers its own centrally imposed proposal to be preferable, as it seems to go against the spirit of localism?
Well, I'll certainly have a look at the proposal that he talks about. What we have done is make sure that where schools aren't succeeding and where schools are coasting, then yes, they are taken over and turned around. And I think it's very important that we intervene on behalf of local parents to make sure that happens. But I'll look at the specific case that he mentions.
Katie Clark.
How does it make sense when the government is losing millions in tax avoidance to close North Ayrshire Tax Office when every officer there brings in hundreds of thousands of pounds in lost taxes to the Exchequer?
But what we have done is at least 40 changes to make sure that people do pay their taxes. We inherited a situation where foreigners weren't paying stamp duty, where hedge fund managers were paying less tax than their cleaners, and where a number of people were avoiding tax on an industrial scale. They sit there now, they were the friends of the tax avoiders. They had 13 years to act, and they did nothing, and it took a Conservative government to sort it out.
Mr. David Ward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister believe his own behaviour and that of the Leader of the Opposition at Prime Minister's questions either enhances or damages the image of the Houses of Parliament and indeed politicians in the eyes of the members of the public?
What I would say to the honourable gentleman is it is inevitably a robust exchange. There are always ways, I'm sure, we can improve Prime Minister's questions, but I would say it does have an important function, which is it does make sure we have accountable government in our country and people can ask the Prime Minister anything they want.
Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister rightly designated child sexual exploitation as a national threat. Sadly, the police are receiving more reports of abuse than ever before, but there are fewer investigations and prosecutions than in 2010-11. In this time, 16,000 police officers have been cut. How can it be right to cut a further 1,100 next year?
First of all, let me say thank you to her for mentioning the fact that we have made this an issue of national importance. What that will do is trigger work not just by local police forces but by the National Crime Agency as well. So you'll see more resources put into these sorts of investigations using all the tools that modern police are able to bring to investigations. So instead of seeing other things as priority, you'll see the priority given here. In terms of what the police have been able to do, yes, their budgets have been reduced, but the percentage of police on the front line has gone up and crime has fallen right across the country.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Mr. Speaker, in a dangerous world, experience as a statesman is one of the advantages, one of the many advantages my right honourable friend has over any alternative Prime Minister. Will he agree that in such a dangerous world, the ultimate guarantee of our security is our nuclear deterrent? And will he confirm that he would never be involved in any shabby deal to give away our nuclear deterrent as part of a deal with the unilateralist party simply to get the keys to number 10?
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. The ultimate guarantor of Britain's security is our independent nuclear deterrent, and that is why we support it and will make sure it is properly renewed beginning in the next Parliament. And I think it's important that everyone in this House makes that clear pledge. And they make that clear pledge that it is concerning that almost 3/4 of Labour candidates oppose the renewal of Trident. And I think now is the time for Labour to rule out any agreement with the SNP, because no one wants to see some grubby deal between the people who want to break up the United Kingdom and the people who want to bankrupt the United Kingdom.
To have the accountable government that the Prime Minister just talked about, he needs to answer questions asked of him. Yeah. So for the third time of asking today, there is a debate planned by broadcasters on April the 30th, a two-way debate. Will he be there?
Yes, sir. I've been very clear. I've I've said get on with the debates before the election campaign. And I think we should start now.
Mr. Andrew Griffiths.
Mr. Speaker, I bring the House good news, Mr. Speaker. For the first time in 10 years, British beer sales are up. The campaign for real ale said that the Chancellor's scrapping of Labour's hated beer duty escalator and 2 cuts in beer duty have saved 1,050 pubs. The Sun newspaper today, which champions Britain's beer drinkers, says the Chancellor is poised to repeat the cut. Will the Prime Minister join me in assuring beer drinkers that this government is on the side of publicans, on the side of British brewers, and urge the Chancellor to have a 3rd cut?
Well, first of all, can I praise the honourable gentleman for the work that he's done to support the beer industry, to support Britain's pubs, and to stand up for our local communities where the pub is so often the hub of the village and of the community. And this government has been a good friend to Britain's pubs and to the beer industry. I'm delighted with the figures that he reads out. It always goes to show that life's better under the Conservatives.
Julie Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister agree with his Minister at the Department for Business that prosecuting people who don't pay the minimum wage is the politics of envy?
Prosecuting people for not paying the minimum wage is absolutely the right thing to do. And what we've done is made sure that the resources are there for that to happen. And let me give her the figures. We've now got 3,200 penalties have been issued for non-payment of the minimum wage, amounting to nearly £3 million in fines. What we've seen is the maximum penalty being increased. We're naming and shaming non-compliant businesses, and you're getting that sort of action under a government led by me.
Mr. Guy Opperman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our long-term economic recovery plan for the North East has seen wages up, apprenticeships doubled, exports up, and unemployment in every constituency in the North East has fallen in the last year, and by 37% in Hexham. We are fixing the mess left behind by the Labour government. Can the Prime Minister set out what the future plan for the North East is, please?
Well, first of all, we are setting out our long-term economic plan for the North East. He's absolutely right about the figures in his own constituency. The claimant count in Hexham is down by 53%. But what is really fascinating about what's happening today is in terms of what's happening in terms of youth employment. And I can tell the House a new figure. In the last year, the UK saw a bigger rise in employment levels for under 25s than the whole of the rest of the European Union combined. That is what is happening with our economy recovering. The biggest risk to that economic recovery is the wrecking ball of the Labour Party.
Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, Mr. Irfan Williams of Bangor, has been refused the drug treatment for his cancer. He's moved to England and I understand will be beginning treatment next Wednesday.
Goodness. Wow.
What would the Prime Minister say to Mr. Williams and others who have had to fight on a case-by-case basis for the treatment prescribed? Mr. Williams himself is a senior healthcare professional.
Well, what I'd say to Mr. Williams is first of all, he has my sympathy and understanding for the condition that he has. I hope that he'll get the treatment that he needs in England. In England, we are investing £60 million in this Parliament to introduce the bowel scope screening in the NHS, which I think is going to be absolutely vital, going to the earlier question of identifying this cancer, which is a major killer, identifying it much earlier. The English NHS is performing 850,000 more operations each year compared with 2010. But the problem is that in Wales, the Labour Party has made the wrong decision and cut NHS spending. Now, they don't have to make that decision because, of course, the increase in NHS spending in England triggers the Barnett money being available in Wales. So even at this late stage, I would plead with the Labour government in Wales, make the right decision on health, increase the spending, increase the cancer treatments, and give people like your constituent the treatment they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a recent visit to my constituency to announce the Growth Fund allocation for the South West LEP, my right honourable friend, as part of the City deal, learnt about how the Marine Industrial Campus in Devonport's South Yard, on unwanted MOD land, could create 1,000 new skilled jobs. As my right honourable friend knows, this opportunity could be lost if the land is not transferred to the City Council before Purdah. Can my right honourable friend confirm when this is going to happen?
Well, as my honourable friend knows, I visited in January to go and see at first hand the plans for the Maritime Industrial Campus. I think it is a very exciting development. As he knows, discussions are underway between Plymouth City Council and the Defence Infrastructure Organisation. I don't think there's any reason why these can't be completed by the end of the month, and I'm pressing the Ministry of Defence to do everything it can to make that happen. And I can also confirm that funding is there should the case be approved, which of course was secured as part of the City deal. This is very important for Plymouth, and I want to see it happen.
Mr. Speaker, we all know the Prime Minister trebled tuition fees. Will he today rule out increasing them again?
I tell you what we have done is we've created a system where the universities are now better funded than others in Europe. The number of students going to university has increased, and the number of people from poor backgrounds has gone up as well. And we have, from the party opposite, they've taken 4 years to work out their policy. And their policy, it hits universities, helps rich students rather than poor ones, and also it does nothing to expand university education in our country. It's going to be paid for by additional pension taxes on senior nurses, military figures, firefighters. They have spent 4 years to come up with a completely useless policy. It is, if you like, a monument to the chaos you'd get under a Labour government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unemployment in my constituency and across northern Lincolnshire has plummeted since 2010, and in large part that's been due to infrastructure investment from this government, be it the Humber Bridge or investment in the A160 in my humble friend's constituency. Can I urge the Prime Minister to look closely at the possibility of a feasibility study into electrification of the Southern Transpennine line in northern and north east Lincolnshire?
I will certainly have a look at the proposal that he makes. As he knows, we have made real progress on electrification of railway lines as part of the infrastructure investment that we put in. Very recently, I was in his constituency with the Homes and Community Agency looking at a vital road development that's opening up economic development in his constituency, but happy to look at the electrification project as well.
Meg Munn. Schools with outstanding academic results can go years and years with no inspection of their child protection procedures. Is it not time to put child protection much more central to the Ofsted process and ensure that every school is inspected on what they're doing about child protection regularly?
Well, I will look carefully at the point that she makes. I think for many years, inspections were seen as almost too routine on schools that were outstanding and were delivering good results, and we needed to focus more on the failing schools and the schools requiring improvement. But she makes an important point, because when we look at things like child sexual exploitation, an issue that we need to address in this Parliament and beyond, or indeed issues like forced marriage or FGM, it's very important that we know the right safeguarding policies are in place. Of course, these things can also be triggered by boards of governors, by concerned parents, rather than having to have a routine inspection, but I'll have a look at the proposal she makes.
Mark Hunter.
Speaker, 2 years ago, a toddler in my constituency, Millie Thompson, tragically died following a choking incident at a local nursery. Her parents set up Millie's Trust to campaign for changing the law so that all relevant nursery staff must have paediatric first aid qualifications. An e-petition of over 100,000 signatures and a backbench business debate led to the Minister, the member for East Surrey, to promise a review which is currently being undertaken. Does the Prime Minister support this campaign? And if so, will he respectfully ask the Minister to get a move on?
I will certainly talk to my right honourable friend, the Minister, about this review. Obviously, it makes sense for as many people to have that sort of training as possible, because where you can prevent needless loss of life and prevent accidents from happening, of course you should. So let me talk to the member for East Surrey and get back to my honourable friend.
Ian McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's try the Prime Minister and another one of his promises, and that was to make energy companies put their customers on the lowest possible tariff. Too many of my constituents are still paying many hundreds of pounds more per year for energy. Will the Prime Minister again make that promise, or is he content to wait until an incoming Labour government in May of this year fixes this energy market?
What we promised was to get energy companies to cut their bills by taking some of the charges off them, and that's been delivered. What the Labour Party is promising is a price freeze even when prices are coming down. So even before the election, they've started to inflict real damage on consumers in our country by helping to keep prices higher than they otherwise should be.
Robin Walker!
Worcestershire is one of the 3 fastest growing county economies in the UK, and in Worcester, youth unemployment is now down by 2/3 since it peaked under Labour. Businesses are investing in our world-class county, but one factor holding back that investment is the long journey time it takes us to reach us by rail from the capital. Can I ask the Prime Minister, whose own constituency is on the same line, to join me in the fast-track Worcester campaign that could deliver us a 2-hour service?
I'm very keen to join my honourable friend in this campaign because it would benefit my constituency too. We have seen a dualling of more parts of the Cotswold railway line in recent years and an improvement in car parks, which I think is all to the good. This is a vital railway service. We're hearing a lot from the Shadow Chancellor today. He told us that he was a long, slow burn, but I have to say, Mr. Speaker, the only thing lying in ashes is Labour's economic credibility.
Recent figures produced by the TUC have shown that 40% of workers in my constituency of Hayward and Middleton earn less than the living wage. With women particularly badly affected, 53% of women workers earn less than £16,000 a year. What's the Prime Minister going to do to ensure that workers in my constituency start to feel the recovery?
Well, first of all, I support the living wage, and I think those employers that should pay it, that can pay it, should pay it. But what we do to help all people in this situation is to make sure the minimum wage is properly enforced, to see it increased over time, and then, of course, to lift people out of tax, and we've lifted 3 million people out of tax by raising to £10,600 the amount of money that you can earn before you start paying tax. That has benefited low-paid people and has benefited women, and if you get a Conservative government after the next election, we will raise that threshold to £12,500 so you can work 30 hours on minimum wage and pay no income tax whatsoever.
Sir Gerald Howarth.
As we approach the general election, can I urge my right honourable friend to abandon his natural reticence and remind the British people that the last Labour Prime Minister destroyed the public finances, ran up a massive £156 billion budget deficit, plundered the pension funds, sold off the gold at a ridiculously low price, whilst under my right honourable friend's stewardship and 5 years of hard graft, the United Kingdom now has the fastest growing economy in the G7. Wages rising in real terms for the first time since 2007. What we need, as my right honourable friend said, is a Conservative government.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. I haven't felt particularly reticent today, but what I would say is the economy is recovering. You see that in jobs. You now see that in living standards. You see it in the lowest rate of inflation that we've had for many years in our country. The economy has turned around. We've turned that corner. Things are getting better, and we mustn't let Labour wreck it.
Mr. John Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The suffering of constituents of mine like Lisa Brady and Simon Davey and James Titcombe, who lost their babies at Furness General, is hard to imagine. They have had years of struggle to get to the point yesterday where the Kirkup report put through a host of recommendations, both for our local hospital but also for the wider NHS. Will he honour their struggle today by saying the government will implement those recommendations in full?
Well, I think it is a very important report, and that's why the Health Secretary made the statement that he did. We want to see many of these changes put in place. What I would say is where we have problems in our NHS, and we saw this with mid-staffs, and we've seen it in the case that he mentions, it's very important that we don't sweep those problems under the carpet, but we are open and honest about them. We send in the inspectors with the newly beefed up CQC. We have this new post of Chief Inspector of Hospitals, which I think brings focus to the whole organisation. and we work out how to turn a hospital round, how to put it into special measures, how to get things fixed so that these tragedies don't happen again. But my heart goes out to all those people who lost their children in things that should never have happened in our country.
Order.